Hi, I'm Shyam Balganesh, and I'm a professor of law at Columbia Law School, where I teach and write on copyright and intellectual property. In popular music, copyright infringement claims come up all the time. Very recently, popular artists Katy Perry, Ed Sheeran, Dua Lipa have all been in court defending against claims of copying and copyright infringement. I've been examining the use of a fundamental rule of copyright infringement cases, the inverse ratio rule, which has come under attack, and that is bad for copyright law. The case that endangered the rule involved the rock group Led Zeppelin and one of the best-known opening guitar riffs to their song, Stairway to Heaven. In 2014, the estate of songwriter Randy Wolf sued Led Zeppelin. It claimed that the opening bars of Stairway to Heaven were copied from Wolf's song, Taurus. The case made its way through the federal courts and eventually landed up in the Ninth Circuit, which in 2020 concluded that Led Zeppelin had not copied from Randy Wolf. But when they arrived at this conclusion, they also threw out the inverse ratio rule. So what is the inverse ratio rule and why do we need it? Proving copyright infringement in music is a two-step process. First, you need to show that your work was actually copied. Second, you need to show that the copying was substantial, so that it amounts to a wrongful form of copying. And here's the reality. People rarely admit to copying. So courts are forced to rely on circumstantial evidence. And they do this by asking two questions. First, whether the defendant had access to the original. Could the defendant have heard the original or seen the sheet music? And second, whether the defendant's copying is similar to the original. The inverse ratio rule says the greater the proof of access to the original, the lesser the similarity needs to be between the two works in order to prove copying. Using circumstantial evidence in this way is foundational to law. The inverse ratio rule works to put together pieces of evidence in the same way in which circumstantial evidence comes together in, say, a murder trial. Now, the strength of each inference will vary. What matters the most is that when combined together, the story meets the burden of proof. In a criminal case, beyond a reasonable doubt, or in a civil case, such as copyright infringement, that it is more likely than not. The inverse ratio rule simply builds on this basic idea. A weak inference on access can be offset by a strong showing of similarity, and the other way around. In finding for Led Zeppelin, the Ninth Circuit threw out the inverse ratio rule altogether. On the one hand, it's saying use circumstantial evidence to prove copying. But on the other, it's saying don't allow the relative strengths of the different inferences to offset each other. You just can't have it both ways. Many prominent musicians worry that because the internet has made it easy to prove access, even for lesser known works, they're likely to be sued, even for minor similarities. But if the rule is applied correctly, with an appreciation for how circumstantial evidence works, this need not be the case. Copyright law may well be a specialized area with its own growing complexity. But in courts, the same basic rules of procedure and evidence apply consistently, and they well should.